Hey, it's Jeff Sauer here representing ppccourse.com, and I'm going to answer a question that comes up all the time from my students, and that is, what should we put into the terms and conditions of a contract if we are either hiring a PPC service provider or if we are going to be a service provider ourselves? Now, I'm not going to give you legal advice in this video, but I'm going to talk about some of the common things that you should understand when it comes to creating a contract and give you some resources you can use to do better in this task. And the reason why I'm wearing this shirt, because it's t-shirt week. This is day 2 of t-shirt week, and SimilarWeb is something that I use all the time whenever I create a proposal to make sure that I can deliver results for my clients. So I can spy on how my potential clients are doing, how their competitors are doing, and make sure there's a market for me to make an impact on them. So before I put things to a contract, I definitely make sure that I pay attention to what's happening from competitive intelligence. And SimilarWeb happens to be one of those tools, and it also happens to be a t-shirt that I had handy right before I recorded this video. So enjoy this look into what goes into a contract, and make sure you leave a comment with any questions as well. Let's talk about the do's and don'ts of creating a PPC contract. Now, PPC contracts are important for both clients and consultants. And so if you're on the client side where you're hiring a consultant to help you manage your PPC campaigns, or if you're the consultant who's doing the management, you both need to understand how contracts work. And I'm going to give you an unbiased point of view that benefits both clients and consultants as it comes to developing a contract. Now, before we get started, I want you to read through this disclaimer and understand that we are not giving you legal advice, and this does not replace you hiring your own attorney. That's something I can't stress enough, is that if you want to make sure you do this right, you need to talk to a legal professional. This is not something I recommend skimping on. You definitely want to spend the money to get this right because it has a lot of implications down the line, and it's a very important piece of being in business. Whether you're the client or whether you're the service provider, you need to make sure that you are protecting yourself. And that's a pretty big theme throughout this entire video. With that out of the way, let's talk about legalese. Legalese is pretty scary, right? Now, I've been scared of it for a long time, and I think the reason why is because I was watching the movie Willy Wonka all the time when I was a kid, probably about 100 times, and there's a line from there that really sticks out for me. Every time I hear the word contract, this guy who's Mr. Beauregard, who is Violet's dad in Willy Wonka, the guy on the right-hand side, he says, "Don't talk to me about contracts, Wonka. I use them myself. They're strictly for suckers." And I was probably like 5 years old when I saw that the first time, and I've actually been a little bit scared of contracts ever since. So it's scary, but it's 100% necessary. And it's necessary for both clients and consultants. Everybody needs to understand how these things work, and you need to make sure that you have them in place so you can do a successful engagement. Now, for clients, here's why it's necessary. Because it establishes what will be delivered, on what terms, and in what time frame. Pretty standard stuff here, but think about it. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And when is it going to get done? The same thing goes for agencies and consultancies. It's actually the exact same line here. You establish what will be delivered, on what terms, and in what time frame. And it all boils down to capturing the detail of the engagement before you get started. Because everybody's always happy during the courting phase, during the phase when you're trying to sign a contract, when you're trying to get revenue, when you're trying to bring in somebody to do the work for you. But then once the work actually gets done, that's when things might break down or things might end up working not nearly how you planned. And so a contract really protects you on the downside. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the do's and don'ts for creating a PPC contract. And this represents the best interest for both client and consultant, and it helps people get on the same page and understand how you can find common ground and how you can have a fruitful relationship between the vendor and the client. And before we get into the steps, pre-step number 1 is be clear with your expectations up front. If you can't understand what the other person expects and what they want, and you're not clear on this, then you're probably never going to be successful in your contract. You're never going to be successful in your engagement. Nothing's really going to work out how you want it to if you're not clear on the expectations. If somebody's hiring you as a PPC consultant or an agency and they want you to completely fix their business and they want you to do things that aren't related to doing PPC, guess what? You're probably not going to be very successful, even if you do the best PPC campaign ever. So make sure you're clear on expectations and that you have some kind of indication that you can actually achieve that. Now, I would recommend using some kind of competitive intelligence tool to take a look at what they're doing already, what the industry is doing, and see if there's any kind of indicator that this is possible, and even use your own experience. Basically say, is this possible? Can we meet their expectations? And is it something that, yes, we can do it in the parameters we've defined? Can we do it in the number of hours that they're paying us for? Can we do it with the amount of resources we have? Can we do it assuming that they're going to participate, the client that is, in the engagement? Or is it something that we could only have happen in a best case scenario? Because if you're building a contract and you're setting expectations based on a best case scenario, like when you say to yourself, the odds of this happening are 10% and it's only if the conditions are perfect, do you really want to lock yourself into a contract in doing that? And so make sure you're clear with expectations on both sides up front. And if you can't get to the point where somebody even tells you or they can't articulate what their expectations are, that is a red flag. That is a bad sign. That means that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you're probably not going to meet their expectations and they're probably not going to be happy. And when they're not happy, bad things happen. Good things happen when your clients are happy. Bad things happen when they're not. And most of it comes down to setting expectations and to do it early in the process. Pre-step number 2, establish a verbal agreement before you write up the contract. So both of you should say, okay, here's what I think we're going to do. I want to manage your AdWords campaigns. You want to get 100 conversions and you're willing to pay $10,000 a month to do that. Okay, we're going to work on getting to that point in time. Here's what I want to do. And my standard fee for managing $10,000 in spend is somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000. And so here's the amount of money we're charging for our retainer. You would basically say, okay, are you all right with me charging you $2,000 or my agency charging you $2,000 for this contract? And if you say yes, then you can turn it into a formal agreement, getting all the legalese and all the other information in there. Now, this video is sparked by a question that came in from Dale. And Dale is a student of PPC course, and he says that a client's asking them to sign an agreement, which is outlining the terms of engagement. Now, for instance, they want to know exactly what work they're going to do each month and the target conversion CPA in the contract itself. And they want to know, is this normal? Now, my response in our forums, and I'm going to elaborate it on here in this video, was, first of all, you should consult an attorney before entering into any agreement. Now, the note below is not meant to be legal advice. It's just an opinion based on my experience. Now, I would personally, Jeff Sauer, I would never put target conversions or CPA into the contract because it's so far out of your control. Contracts are meant to protect you from liability and to outline the terms of a payment, the protection of your intellectual property, etc. Now, I don't think that you should be using a contract for setting goals because those are subject to change and they're subject to participation from the client. If they don't participate, then you can't hit your goal and you can't fulfill the contract and you are in violation of the contract. And so don't put those things into the contract because you can't deliver on them because it's outside of your sphere of control. Now, I would not include target CPA, target conversions in the contract or the agreement, and I would not agree to it with that level of specificity. Okay, now that's established. That was a mouthful. Let's talk about the question of, is this normal? Is it normal that this would be in a contract? To reiterate what I just said, it's not something that I would put into writing. Now, why wouldn't I do that? Because results and activities are a two-way street. Because it assumes that the service provider has autonomy. It assumes that we have full control over the entire end-to-end process of running PPC, which we almost always do not. It's because adjustments are what generates the results. Like, we can go into somewhere with a plan thinking that things are going to work, but the old quote of Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, is totally true when it comes to running campaigns. We can use all the competitive intelligence in the world, we can predict things, we can draw on our own experiences, but once we get into it, once we get into the market, once we actually understand what's happening, that's when we need to make adjustments, and those adjustments are what help us generate results, positive results. And it's because the market's ever changing. There's competition. So yes, I could do these things. I could probably get perfect results if there was no competition and if everything was going really well. But what happens if they don't? I'm not going to put numbers into a contract because those numbers can easily be found to be not correct or not true or worse than expectations because of competition. I can't control that, so I'm not going to put it into my legal agreement. What I'm legally saying is that I'm going to do work for you in your best interest, and I'm going to do these things, and this is how you're going to pay me. And that's what a contract is. So definitely don't put in those numbers. So you might be wondering what should go into a contract. Let's discuss my do's and don'ts of building a PPC contract. And we'll start with the do's. Do work with an attorney. I can't stress this enough. Do work with an attorney, especially on your first contract, especially when it's your first time doing this. Make sure that you are legally sound when you do this. Do make sure you limit risks on both sides. This is a two-way street. You want both people to be happy with the contract, so make sure you limit the risk on both parties. Do list your payment terms and contingencies for that payment. When should you get paid, and how do you know that you are eligible to get paid? What do you need to do in order to execute in order to get paid? Protect your best interests. If you're looking at a contract, whether you're a client or a service provider, make sure you're protecting your best interests, the interests of your company, especially the interests of your company. Do be specific with the services you're going to be providing. Make sure that the services you say that you're going to provide are something that you can easily check a box and say that this is possible. You can clearly say, yes, I did this. If you can't look at that line item in your contract and check a box that says, yes, I did this, then it's probably not a good line item. Do make sure that you add in standard contract language on top of the services you provide. So the services you provide are generally a very small part of the contract. They may just be a couple lines, they may be a couple pages of the contract, but your contract might be 10, 20 pages long, and that's because of the standard contract language you need to have in there as well to make this agreement legally binding. And finally, make sure everybody is happy with the terms. If you're not happy with the terms before you sign the contract, the first sign of trouble, people are going to freak out. You're probably not going to get paid on time. You're probably not going to get the results you're looking for. And it's probably going to result in something where the relationship is burned and terminated forever. So make sure everybody's happy before you even sign the contract with the terms, because it's not going to get any better after that. Now let's get to the don'ts. Don't put any marketing language in your contract. It's as simple as that. Do not put marketing language in your contract. You've already sold the people on what's happening. The contract is just a formality. The contract is just the opportunity to put in writing exactly the terms of payment, the terms around minimizing risk, and all the different things that go into a contract. It has nothing to do with marketing at this point. If you're getting to the point where somebody's ready to sign your contract, that means they've already agreed on the marketing piece and you're just settling on the terms. Avoid using specific numbers or targets in your contract because, again, you don't have full control over that. And if you don't have full control over reaching those numbers, then I wouldn't commit to it. I would never commit to that, actually. Don't assume both parties understand industry jargon. Eliminate industry jargon as much as possible and just talk about what you're planning to do. Don't sign a contract if it doesn't feel right. Again, this is a do and this is a don't. If you don't feel good about this thing, don't sign the contract. If it doesn't feel right, it's not going to get any better once you sign the contract. Again, don't enter into a deal that you're going to immediately regret. This has happened to me before. I sign a contract and then a week later I look at it and like, holy crap, what did I agree to? Sometimes we get greedy, sometimes we get over anxious, sometimes we're over ambitious with what we think we're going to be able to get done. Don't enter into a deal, especially if you think you're going to regret it right away. So give it a holding period, give it a mandatory waiting period of a couple days and say, do you still feel this way? Do you still feel like this is the right contract for you? Don't leave any language open for interpretation. For example, never put the word optimize in your contract because optimize is something that's almost impossible to pin down. How do you know something's optimized? How do you know something's optimal? I could make an argument that something's never optimal. You could probably make that same argument, right? Because we do it once, well, optimal, it means that it's perfect. And in the world of the internet, the world we work in, especially when Google's out there trying to make a profit, we're trying to make a profit, everybody's trying to make a profit, what is optimal? Optimal is a moving target, so don't put it into your contract. Don't assume everything's going to work out perfectly because it never does. And don't forget why contracts exist. And it's for when things don't go according to plan. So yes, contracts, hopefully you'll never need to do anything around it. Hopefully they're just a formality and you just get your work done and you do it well. But contracts are really necessary for when things don't go according to plan. Now, would you like us to help you develop a contract template? Here's my question to you. We've been thinking about developing a contract template that somebody can buy off the PPC course website. And we aren't sure if there's a market for it or if people would want that or what. And so if we were to make this thing available as a premium purchase, would you be interested in buying it? Let me know by leaving a comment on the PPC course website. And if we get enough votes, if we get enough interest, then we will start that process of developing our premium contract template. Now, if you like this PPC tip, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter at www.ppccourse.com.